So, you want to build something busted. You want your next character to be a great character. Well, how do you know if your build is good? What should you be seeking to do? What should you be thinking about? That's what I'm going to teach you today. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka Thraben, and you here for another Pathfinder Second Edition video. And today we're going to be making impossibly strong builds. Or, more accurately, teaching you how to make them. So my goal for today is to briefly show you theory and then really get into the weeds with the examples, because I kind of build my characters conceptually the same way every time, and I don't think people conceptualize characters the same way that I do. So I want to show off how I'm thinking about these. We're going to do two practical demonstrations today, one with a rogue and one with an exemplar, of how to make kind of a busted build. And note that when I am showing you these examples, it's not my goal to say, and here's the character sheet at the end. It is instead to tell you what are the problems that you want to be solving when you are trying to develop these characters. Without further ado, let's get directly into it here. This is my conceptual flowchart that I go through when I am creating a character. I come up with my core idea. I want to figure out how do I get to that core idea? What are the different directions that I can take it? How do I lean into the strengths of this character while mitigating their potential weaknesses? I need to build my backup plans for when things go wrong, and then I need to make sure that I am being a good party member as well. So let's briefly cover each one of these. As far as your core idea goes, when you are trying to make your character, the more clearly you can articulate what it is you are trying to do, the better a character you can make. I want you to think about this in terms of essay writing. When you are writing some paper, you want to have a really good thesis statement, right? You want to go, this is the thing that I am arguing. Same thing applies to Pathfinder. This is the thing that I am building. And as you go on, you are going to be able to make a clearer and clearer statement of what it is your character is trying to do. A beginner player might say, I want to make a fire character. I want to make a fire mage. When you learn more about the system, that becomes, I'm going to be a fire kineticist, which becomes, I'm going to be a single gate fire kineticist. And then when you really know what you're talking about, I'm going to be a single gate fire kineticist until level 5, but then I know that my reflex saves are kind of the only thing that I'm doing as a fire kineticist, so I'm going to fork the path into earth at level 5 so that I can get access to a fortitude save. Okay, now you're cooking. Now you have a clear direction of what it is you're doing with your character. And note that when you are coming up with your core idea, you are likely going to revise. In no way, when you are making the core idea for your character, are you going to know their weapon skills, archetypes, spell selection, critical feats, stat spread, background, ancestry, and all of that sort of stuff. So when coming up with your core idea, refine this as you go along. Iterate on it. Next up, how are you getting to your goal? What are the different ways you can get to your character idea? And at a simple level, this is what class best fits my idea. But a lot of times, the ideas that are neat and intricate involve splicing together two different things, a class and an archetype. And one of the things you need to ask is, which one of these is best as my class, and which one of these is best as my archetype? Sometimes there are things that you can only get if something is your class. Critical class features, for example, you might have to be that class. But if you are trying to just get a low-level class feat to round out your build, you can get that easily from an archetype. So let's say you want to be a ranger or a fighter, and you're not sure which one you want to do, and you're going to do the other with an archetype. Look at, what do I get if I make each one of these as my main class, and what can't I get if I make each one of these my main class? And then you can start seeing the advantages and disadvantages of doing it each way. Sometimes in building a character, there might be a specific item that is going to make your build pop. Solving an action economy problem, solving a hands problem, solving a, hey, my weapon doesn't have this trait, oh, but this shield augment can give me the trip trait so I can actually still do everything I want with my build. Next, you want to figure out how you are going to lean into your strengths as a character. How are you going to get better at your best thing without generating additional weaknesses? And I've put without in big letters there because you do not simply want to over specialize in one thing at the cost of making your character much, much weaker at multiple other things. Note that on some classes, being a generalist is a strength of your character, and it is possible to lean into being a generalist. Alchemists looking at you on this one in particular, where you might not be the best at a lot of things, but you can do darn near anything given enough versatile vials and time. Next up, how are you going to mitigate the weaknesses that your build is created? And most characters are going to have a weakness. Very few characters are going to be good at doing everything. This is a party game. You don't have to be good at doing everything. And while you might not fully eliminate your weakness, you want to at least have planned for your weakness. And if you can mitigate some of the downsides that you think you are going to see coming, that is probably going to help out a lot. You don't need to fully warp your build around fixing some weakness you have. You need to have a healthy respect and recognition of your weaknesses, and if you can do a little something to help them out, that's probably a good idea. Next up is the backup plan. A lot of times when I see people plan out their characters, they're like, okay, this is exactly what my turn looks like every time, or this is a cycle of actions that I am going to do. And many of these optimized character builds are going to fall apart in practical combat. When things go wrong, when you get bad status conditions, when you get knocked over, when the enemy is immune or very good against one of the things that you would like to do. Can your character still function well when your turn cycles are disrupted, when your plan A is not a good thing? To oversimplify, what if your fighter can't attack anymore for one reason or another? Does your fighter still have something else they could do other than just simply attack? What do you do in those scenarios where your greatest strength is invalidated for one reason or another? Having some degree of backup plan is important. It's okay to rely on X thing most of the time, but emphasis on most of the time. You should have other things you are capable of doing other than the primary thing your class is built to do. And finally, how do you be a good party member? This is one of the things that I think is most important in building a truly busted character. Consistently, the characters that I have felt like have been the most highly optimized are the characters who are very good at supporting their allies and being able to take on different roles within a difficult fight. So, building your absolutely busted build, your impossibly strong build, as I called them, means having some ability to support your fellow party members both in and out of combat. If all you are optimizing for is making the damage number go up as high as possible, you are maybe doing a valid role, but you are perhaps not the impossibly strong character that you think you are because you're not capable of doing as many different things as some of your party members might be. So your character needs to have both in and out of combat utility. You need to be able to do some damage in combat, but you also need to do something to be able to support in combat. You need to be able to flip that lever, flip that switch, and support your allies when you need to. And with that being said, let's get into the practical examples, which is really going to be the meat and potatoes of today's video. So let's start at the idea stage with an exemplar. You have decided that you want to build an unkillable hero. You found an awesome synergy. You think to myself, I'm going to rotate between these two icons, Barrow's Edge and Scar of the Survivor, so that you can hit an enemy, regain some hit points, shift your spark into your Scar of the Survivor, and then use an action to regain even more hit points. You're going to be on the front line. You're going to be this unkillable healer. You're going to be this tank. You don't need no healing font cleric to keep you up. You've got this. And this is an awesome character idea. So let's expand on this. The first thing that I always do is try to consider what multiple paths do I have towards the same goal? And let's go back and look at Barrow's Edge for a second. So you regain hit points equal to half the damage dealt. So if you can make the damage number go up, then you can make the healing number go up. So you could use a two-handed weapon, go big bonk, and big bonk translates to big healies. We made two numbers go up at the same time. That's awesome. But what if you do a one-handed weapon? A one-handed weapon lets you shield block, which is one of your class features that you get at level 1. This means that you can also use actions to raise shield and increase your AC, so you're not even getting hit sometimes in the first place. So you are gaining survivability because you don't get hit, you're gaining survivability because you can shield block, and between your shield block and your ability to heal through multiple different sources, you're going to be really hard to kill. These are two valid paths forward on the same character design. So which one do we want to take? And how does this impact other choices we're going to make? The one-handed build is already using a reaction. The two-handed build does not have a reaction. So if you are going into this two-handed build and doing big damage, at level 6, you might want to take the reactive strike feat. Whereas if you are going for this shield build, then for your third icon at level 1, you might choose the Mirrored Aegis, which is a shield that has some benefits and among other things can auto-repair itself in between combats, which is pretty sweet. Neither one of these builds is wrong, but there are going to be very strong build differences between walking down each one of these different paths. And as this continues and you start doing these other things that I'm doing in designing my characters, you might zero in on, well, which one of these is better? So how do we lean into our strengths as this character? Our strength very clearly is supposed to be our resilience, our tankiness. So obviously, making the HP number go up is one easy way to make that better. You can take the toughness feat for more HP. You can take the die hard feat if you want, although I believe your scar is giving you that sometimes to make it so that if you go down, you're not dying. You can be an orc for the orcish ferocity reaction. If you stay up at 1 HP, just 1 HP, and then you start healing yourself, well, then you didn't go down, you didn't have to pick up your gear with a couple of actions, and that ends up being really strong. And as an orc, you could also be a hold-scarred orc to get 12 HP from your ancestry instead of 10. Every little bit might count. And in terms of the Exemplar's other class features, you've got root epithets to think about. Do you want to be a proud Exemplar who is going to incentivize enemies to attack you so that that damage is not going at your enemies? Or do you want to be a mournful Exemplar who can dazzle your enemies and make it so that they are less likely to hit you in the first place? And some of your decisions earlier about whether or not you want to go into a one or two-handed route might start to become easier when you start making these other choices. Now we're going to mitigate our weaknesses. If you are building an Exemplar specifically to stay alive, then you're not taking one of the really cool weapon transcendence abilities that can do a bunch of burst damage. And so your damage output is probably going to be lacking compared to other Exemplars, let alone other characters like, say, a fighter or a magus who has that ability to flip the switch and vicious swing or spell strike or something to have a really big turn when you just need to eliminate an enemy right now. And so you might be able to do some things to make it so you can have a burst damage turn. With your archetype, for example, you can take a magus archetype at level 2, if you have, I believe, the 2 intelligence that you're going to need, and then you could get spell strike. You would just be spell striking with a cantrip, and you can only spell strike once per combat. But if you just want to have the option to flip that switch and go Nova for a turn, that's exactly what you want. Set yourself up in flanking, try to hit with that spell strike, and maybe delete a small enemy and take pressure off of everyone else. Alternatively, if you want to use your archetype for something flavorful, what if your third icon was just a big, scary weapon? One of those weapons, like, say, Titan's Breaker, that has the ability to hit really, really hard. You could take the lightning swap Exemplar feat and intend on, say, being a sword and shield Exemplar for most of the time, and then you go like, oh no, like, we're overwhelmed, I need to delete an enemy. Lightning swap, I went from sword and shield into a two-handed maul transcendence ability. Now I am taking that big swing. And when you need to switch modes, one action, lightning swap again, that lets you draw both of your items. It's a very powerful feat in the right circumstances. The Exemplar might have other weaknesses that you need to mitigate, but this is an example of one of them. Next up is your backup plan. And the reason that I picked an Exemplar specifically for my first example here is because I think the Exemplar is one of those classes like Magus that naturally lends itself to a pattern. So for example, my Exemplar here wants to strike, drink of my foes after I hit, and then use no scar but this, so that I am striking and healing twice per turn cycle. Let's take the scenario now where I miss my first strike. That is action 1. My spark is in my weapon. Now what do? Do I want to waste an action manually moving my spark so that I can do no scar but this? That doesn't sound great compared to other things that I might be capable of doing. What is my plan when things go wrong? If you're a shield build, it's even more complicated. Your cycles might be longer. So now it's strike, drink of my foes, raise a shield as third action. Next turn, then I no scar but this, then strike, then drink of my foes. I don't raise my shield that turn. Well, now what happens when you miss a strike? Now what happens when you need to move and these cycles are disrupted? So the Exemplar on paper might have these really cool cycles that they are capable of, but in practice, you're going to get knocked prone. You're going to get flanked and be in a bad position and need to move. You're going to need to support your allies by getting into a flanking position for them. By the way, we've only been talking about 2 icons for the most part. What are you doing with that third icon? What are you doing with your archetype if you're not going down that Magus route? Do you, for example, want to go and in my first turn of combat, I'm going to, with my mirrored Aegis icon, raise the walls, and I'm going to give myself a permanent AC boost and reflex save boost for the rest of this fight while giving that to one of my allies as well, and then I'll start this cycle. That would be a way to use your third icon. If you are taking any skill trainings or in-combat actions here, maybe using those things on these turns where things go wrong is wise. And this is going to fork into the next point, which is being a good party member. This build is what I would consider to be a selfish build. You are building around your character doing one thing. Doing it pretty darn well, but doing one thing. So how are you supporting your allies beyond just being the punching bag? Which is a valid role, but what else can you do? So for example, let's say you strike and miss. What if you invested in some recall knowledge skills? Maybe a dubious knowledge skill feat. Now, when your turn has gone wrong, you can have excellent ways of supporting your casters in the party and getting them the information that they need. Oftentimes, knowing which save is your opponent's lowest save might be a +2 or even +3 difference in the success of your ally spellcaster's spell. In terms of other plan Bs, if your enemy is really hard to hit, or, oh no, some terrible status effect has happened, what if Victor's Wreath is your third icon? And now you're going to go into Victor's Wreath and use its Transcendence ability to try to get rid of your allies' status effects. Or, and it does this too, that also just gives you a small aura, which gives your allies and you a +1 to hit. Well, that's a fantastic way to party support when you need to. You don't always need to, but being able to pull that trigger on party support is really good. The Exemplar also has yet another icon, which can give you temporary potions or elixirs each day, depending on what you have the formulae for. So, this would be an 8th level example, but you could be making potions of quickness to hand out to your allies. They can start with that in their hand in a battle, glug glug glug, drink that, and now they are hasted. And let me tell you, a kineticist with haste, real good, because now you can move to position yourself so that you can do a 2-action impulse and still make an attack. and your fighter who now gets to, move, your champion who can position better for their reactions. You can do some crazy broken things here. So, while this is not a finished character build at this point, these are the ideas that you would need to solidify this core idea of how do I be this tanky exemplar into an impossibly strong character. Now let's do it again for the rogue. So for idea number 2, I have selected an Avenger Rogue. And I have selected this specifically because there's not good written guides about what you should do with an Avenger Rogue. In case you're not familiar with the Avenger Rogue, it is a class archetype, which means at level 2, instead of taking a class feat, you take a dedication feat, and it changes the way your class works a little bit. To oversimplify, basically you lose some normal rogue features, and you gain the hunt prey action that rangers normally take, and you can get sneak attack damage with any weapon if you have hunted prey with that weapon. There's some deity stuff in there as well that we're going to ignore for the purposes of this video. A quick note, though, if you are thinking about playing an Avenger Rogue, the free archetype rules that are incredibly popular are perhaps not meant to work with the class archetype stuff. So you might need to have a talk with your GM. How do we want to handle the class archetype in a free archetype game? Are you going to take that in your class feat like it says raw? Are you going to take that in your free archetype feat? Are we going to let you take it in your class feat for level 2 and then take a free archetype of whatever it is you actually want on this character? You're going to have some wiggle room there, but we're going to move past that. In talking about multiple paths to the same goal, my immediate thought when I heard sneak attack with any weapon is D12, big bonk. And certainly sneak attack, which is mathematically balanced for these small, agile finesse weapons on your maul, your great sword, your great axe, sounds awesome. And that was the way that I originally started building my Avenger Rogue. But the Avenger Rogue itself is going to give you some incentives for dual wielding. So what if you just get to sneak attack with, say, an advanced weapon that the rogue normally might not have access to, such as the Sawtooth Saber, which has the twin trait, which can give you some bonus damage when you are attacking multiple times with it. So, if our goal is build an Avenger Rogue and be able to sneak attack with a cool weapon, we've got multiple roads that we can go down. And when you are trying to lean into your strengths, you might learn, well, which path is it better to actually go down? The Avenger Rogue at level 4 is going to give you access to Twin Takedown, which requires you have 2 melee weapons, each in a different hand, and for a single action, it lets you make 2 strikes against your hunted prey. If both of them hit, you combine their damage for the purposes of resistances and weaknesses. You apply your multiple attack penalty to each strike normally. But this can potentially allow you to get sneak attack damage twice for 1 action. And that's really cool. So while when I originally started building this character, I was all about the big bonk D12 weapon. When I saw this, I went, okay, there might be something that is worth leaning into. And if you are going to take another archetype on top of this, you could find an archetype that gives you some damage bonus on hit in some way or another and attempt to apply it to both of these strikes. To caution you, some things, such as the Ranger's gravity weapon, only apply to the first strike each turn, so just kind of keep that in mind. You, in theory, want something that can work on multiple hits, such as a flat damage bonus from something like, say, Rage or maybe an Exemplar weapon icon. Now, how are you going to mitigate the weaknesses of your class? Despite the fact that you get sneak attack versus something that you have hunt prey on, you still need to qualify for the normal sneak attack stuff. Your cool hunt prey thing that you get from being an Avenger Rogue lets you sneak attack with any weapon, but you still need to have that creature off guard in some way. And the easiest way to do that, especially in bigger parties, is just by flanking. But you're not always going to have that flanking buddy. So you need to plan or not having a flanking buddy. What if I am going early on in the initiative and I want to try to kill this enemy? Well, then maybe I need to have a create a diversion action so that I can get that person off guard when I become hidden to them. And I could potentially follow this up with feats like Confabulator, Lengthy Diversion, and Fleeing Diversion to make that better. Did you think, hey, I am going to be a charisma-oriented character when you first started out with Big Bonk D12 Sneak Attack? No, probably not. But as you start narrowing in on the focus of this character, and you realize that you are going to be making deception checks, you might learn something fundamental about your character building, which is going to bring you back to refining that core idea. And in terms of backup plans here, if you are investing in charisma now, demoralize is one of the best things you can do when something goes wrong and you need to support your party. You can have a turn where you bone mow to lower your opponent's ability to succeed at a demoralize check and then demoralize them afterwards, which can be a massive swing for your, occult caster who has some just disgusting will save spells that they would love to throw out. And as a rogue, your abundance of skill feats is going to allow you to become trained in deception and intimidation, keep leveling those up, while also maybe taking some other skill feats that you want, maybe going into acrobatics for kip up, or stealth for cool things like foil senses and, always sneaky, legendary sneak at level 15. And as a rogue, you are innately going to be a good party member. You have all of these extra skill trainings. You have all of these extra skill feats. You are going to accidentally become very, very good at supporting your party. And you are probably going to end up with one of these impossibly strong builds if you are building your character using these processes that I have laid out today. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Before I do so, if you've made it to this point in the video and you're not subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. I would love to grow this Pathfinder channel. I would love this to be something that is financially viable for me to invest more time into. The main Magic the Gathering channel is the moneymaker at this point, and if I can devote more time to this Pathfinder channel, that would be really cool, because I love making this content. Anyway, so once again, here was my general flowchart. Come up with your idea. How do you get to making that idea pop? How do you make that come to life? Select the better path to do so after figuring out a couple of ways that you could make it happen. Lean into the strengths of what you're capable of doing while mitigating your weakness. Have backup plans because things are going to go wrong, especially as encounters get harder, and make sure you're doing things to be a good party member. I think if you are doing these things, you are going to build a good character, a great character, an impossibly strong character. So I think that's all I have to say for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Come back in another week or two when I'll have another sweet video for you all. I've still got more to say about optimization, but that's for another day. See ya!